Hello and welcome to this live ceremony in the Wild Moon Sisters Temple. Just going to take a few deep breaths to really arrive in this space, to land in this space of the etheric temple. Welcome, sister, to this ceremony to spotlight the Greek philosopher Hypatia and to spotlight the beloved priestess Mary Magdalene, and to honor all of the women of the past, of the present, and of future. It is my deep intention to honor Hypatia and Mary Magdalene, to weave their ancient stories into this temple so that you may receive those stories and feel into how they might impact you or inform your life right now. To feel how those stories and those women may be living through you. And in so doing, I would like to honor all of the women. All of the women. I have just come out of a deep ceremony with the Great Mother, and in that ceremony, my mentor held space for us to connect to our bloodlines through our maternal side, and to also heal the mother wound as it exists between us and the cosmic mother and us and our birth mother. And so I'm just feeling really tender and probably just a little bit emotional and possibly guarded from that deep opening. And so I'm just allowing my heart to open back up and to be vulnerable, to be raw, and to share from a real space of heart and of strength. And the subject of honoring the women is feeling so alive for me right now. It's been so much of my life where I have not honored the feminine qualities, where I have sought perfection, where I have sought approval for qualities of the masculine, and have looked to men for approval, have looked to compete with men to prove myself as worthy, have judged other sisters for their feminine qualities. And so I'm in this deep place of healing the sisterhood wound within myself, and healing that wound is embracing the feminine, the divine feminine as it lives within me, and also embracing all of the women in my life, all of the women who have come before us, all of the women who will come after us. And so just really, I'm really wanting to hold a container, hold a space, hold a ceremony to honor how the patriarchy has impacted all of us, and especially all of us women, all of us sisters. And that's exactly what this ceremony is dedicated to. Thank you so much for being here. If you are here with me right now, it is meant to be. You are meant to receive this medicine in your womb, in your heart, in your being. You're meant to be here right now. So thank you for being here. I'm going to hold the sanctified temple space through lighting some smudge. You can see my altar in the background. There's also a sacred space holder for us in this ceremony. Okay, so I have a smudge ball from some smudge that I have picked in Alberta in Canada. And so I am just offering this smoke to you, sister, so that you may receive any cleansing, any healing, any clearing that you may need in this moment. I'm offering this smoke to all of the sisters of the Wild Moon Sisters, to all of the sisters who are joining in this ceremony, and offering it to Mary Magdalen, Hypatia, to our higher selves, devoting the smoke to cleanse out any beliefs, any thought patterns, any wounds that are keeping us separate from our feminine spirit or divine feminine aspect, that are keeping us separate from other sisters and other women, that are keeping us separate from the cosmic womb, and that are keeping us from experiencing the truth of the stories of Mary Magdalen and Hypatia. So I offer this smoke up and ask that it helps to cleanse out any untruths so that each sister may viscerally feel in her being what is truth for her, not only in my words, but so that she can feel truth for herself as it is in her being. Okay. Wonderful. Offering the smoke to all of the women of our bloodlines, all of the women, all of our ancestors, all of the women who have ever lived, all of the women who are alive right now, and all of those little girls who are going to grow up to be women. And to all of the women of the future, I offer this smoke up in recognition of what it takes to be alive during these times, what it takes to be in integrity, to be in alignment, to be in love during these times, and just offering this as devotion to what it means to be a woman, a being of the womb with a womb. Okay, so I'd like to pull an oracle card from the Magdalene Oracle deck. Just to set the stage, to set the theme for what wants to flow through. Okay. I'm asking that this reading is perfect and of service to each sister on her path, that whatever the message is, that she know it, that she feel it as it is meant to be received for her in this moment right now. So I ask you to drop down into your womb space as I pull this card so that you may feel what the message means for you from a place of the body as opposed to a place of the mind. Okay. I like this. I pulled the card Ascension, and I'm kind of laughing because I do weekly oracle card readings in this temple, and the last card that I pulled for our temple was Ascension. So I suppose this card is really wanting to come through. So just allow yourself to receive the colors, to receive what this means for you. And the message that is coming through for me as this card speaks to me is not that we need to ascend because we are impure, because we are sinful as humans in our humanity, that there's nowhere that we're trying to get, but that ascension is an internal process of activating the sacred kundalini energy, the serpent snakes in the internal of the being to reactivate the DNA within our being that has been passed down from generation to generation to generation with the key codes of truth of how the universe works. And so this ascension is this process. It's the same spiral as our DNA, the same spiraling up through the column of the Sushumna with the two serpent snakes to awaken the chakras so that we can get to the higher place of enlightenment. And enlightenment is an internal process of immanence, of recognizing the goddess and the creator within, the guru within, the big self, the big universe within. So it's not an ascension of getting somewhere, but it's this internal alchemized process of peeling the layers of untruth, of perception to get to the core of the essence of the truth of who we really are, which is love. And so I'm bringing into what thread of this message wants to be pulled into this ceremony. And what's coming through to me is that there is this need to awaken our DNA, to awaken our codes of remembrance as women, so that we know the truth of our history, of the suppression that we have received, so that we know the truth of how to be a sovereign being, of how to be the sovereign queen of our lives, of how to be on the path of mastery. And so this is so essential for the awakening of humanity. We are entering a new era, a new dawn, where we are going out of the trance of scarcity and we are moving into the reality of abundance, the truth of abundance. And there's a lot of hiccups and a lot of distasteful pieces of news and terrible happenings that are happening, but the awakening of the consciousness is a real thing, and it is happening. You can feel it. You can see it with all of these priestesses coming out, with all of the witches coming out, with all of the healers coming back out, with the divine feminine starting to be remembered and revered. And I have a message from Magdalene that I would like to read. So this comes from Return of the Divine Sophia. It's an incredible book. I recommend it if you're interested. And this comes from, let's see, this comes from the Gnostic Gospels of Mary Magdalene. And she writes, okay, so this is what Tricia McCannon, who wrote this book, is saying. At the center of her teachings is the heart and the importance of reclaiming the mother spirit to restore balance to the world. And this is what Mary Magdalene writes. The Divine Mother is light and she is darkness. She is the saint and she is the sinner. Angels and demons are images in her, as are the gods and all of the archons. Yet she is beyond all of these. Know her in all things and you will be free of bondage, even as the anointed is free. So just breathing into those words, I just really want to spotlight Mary Magdalene here is an illustration of her, and I just want to spotlight her and how she has showed up for humanity and how the patriarchy has impacted her. And I want to tie her into Hypatia and to where we are as women right now as well. And so what I really want to presence is with Mary Magdalene, she, you know, there's a lot of things that have been written about her, and there's a lot of controversial information. There's a lot of misunderstandings. And so any information that I give about her, my ask for you is to, instead of come from a place of ego and mind, is to drop into your womb so that you can have a body felt experience of what is truth. And I'm not saying that what I say is truth. It is truth for me. I wouldn't be saying it otherwise, but it doesn't need to be truth for you. So anything that I say about these women, allow yourself to discern for yourself what resonates as a yes of truth within your being. And if you're unclear of how to do that, a really simple way to discern truth from distruth is to feel the energy within your body. And so if you can get still and quiet and something, you have a sensation of energy collapsing and coming in and going down, usually I experience that as a distruth, as a no. If I experience my energy expanding and it feels joyful, it feels good, then I experience that as a yes. And so it's not about what the mind says is no or yes, it's about what the energy in the body is feeling as a no or yes. So that's just a really simple internal guidance system of how to discern truth from untruth in your own being. And so as I spotlight Mary Magdalene, in my lensing and my experience of her, she was the beloved of Jesus Christ, of Yeshua. She was his tantric lover. She was a priestess of Isis. She was very dedicated to pillaring and anchoring in the frequency of love, of the Sophia, Christ consciousness on earth, to code that into earth for the future awakening of Sophia Christ consciousness, for the ascension, for the enlightenment of humanity, to help people realize themselves as sovereign beings. And a lot of people speak of her as a disciple of Jesus, and that feels untrue to me. She was actually an equal teacher on his side. He would speak of her as the woman who knows all. And so she was not subordinate or a disciple of Jesus, but she actually had her own very phenomenal teaching. She went through her own path of mastery before she had even met Jesus. And so they both had ministries, and she was really supporting his path, and he was more the solar vocal aspect of the ministry that they were both teaching. And when he died, that she actually continued to teach. And there's gospels that went into hiding that were, partially destroyed. And so we still have some of her gospels and her teachings, but there are a lot of teachings still from Mary Magdalene. And there are, like temples and churches all over the place that are honoring Mary Magdalene in France and in England. And so there is a lot to her. She's a very profound woman. And I just want to honor her, especially because about 500 CE, she was tainted. Her name was tainted. And what had happened was one of the popes of the church, I believe of the Catholic Church, he had said that she was actually a prostitute, and that Jesus saved her, and that's why she was always with him. And that was a tool of propaganda to continue to diminish the goddess, a tool to suppress the women who were, the beings who were most embodying the goddess. And that was a threat to the ministry. That was a threat to the church. That was a threat to the priests who taught that you must go to a priest in order to experience God, who was masculine. But in the teachings of Mary Magdalene and the teachings of Jesus, as they actually were, in the teachings of the Gnostics, we know that you can actually experience God, goddess within. And it's not just God, the masculine God, but that it's actually the union of divine feminine and divine masculine that is creator. And the reason why there is this suppression, as I experience it, is because what Mary Magdalene was teaching is sovereignty, is mastery of how to experience that within you so that you can wake up and that you can experience your own divinity and realize heaven on earth. And so in a time of control, which is what, the church was doing, that didn't resonate with holding control of populations. So, very politically, there was a move by the Pope in about 500 and saying that she was a prostitute and basically stripped her of what she actually was, who she was. She was defamed, and in so doing it, just like the story of Adam and Eve and how Eve was the downfall of humanity, it's the same thing. But Mary Magdalene was being totally stripped of all of her glory, her magnificence, of her truth, of her essence. And in so doing that, because she also practiced tantric sexual practices as a divine tool, then what it was saying is that sexual practices are sinful, are evil. And so basically, because women, we really have that Shakti sexual energy that can be used as a tool to create, to transmute, to access divinity. And that was taken away from women through that very political move. And so I just wanted to honor her as a woman whose name was really tainted by the propaganda and pushing forward of the belief system of the patriarchy. And I just invite you to breathe into her story and how her story might relate to how you feel in your life, especially in relationship to your sexuality, to your power, and to your sovereignty. Are there places where you feel as if the mainstream culture or the patriarchy is taking away your innate power through the lensing of what it means to be a woman in modern day culture? That is a big, big question. And so my hope is that maybe these questions and these experiences of knowing her story, they might start to seep into your everyday reality. And so that you might make some connections here in this ceremony, but also that you can weave those connections into your life as you're moving through. And so that is really how I wanted to spotlight Mary Magdalene. And I also want to spotlight Hypatia as an amazing woman who was also very impacted by the patriarchy, by the intentional suppression of the goddess, by the intentional suppression of women as people who were a threat to the ministry of Catholicism, to the ministry of Christianity, to the ministry of any of the main world religions at that time. And so Hypatia was a Greek philosopher. She lived in about 400 CE in Alexandria, Egypt, when there was a lot of the Greek influence in Egypt, and there were the temples and was the Library of Alexandria. And when I read her story, like something in me just shook to the core, because I knew that in her story was the story of the witch burnings, the witch hunts, the desecration of the goddess temples, of all of the women who have been suppressed throughout the times. And I just felt that crystallized in this seed of her story. And so that's why I really want to share it here right now and to presence her. So she was a teacher. She was teaching math and science and philosophy. She studied the mysteries. And she was teaching men. Men actually would travel from far and wide to study with her because she was renowned for her depth in wisdom and understanding. And during her time, she was, during that time was when she was living in Alexandria, it was kind of like the Christians and, the pagans, or those who were worshiping multiple gods and goddesses. They were coexisting, but there was a lot of hostility. And then come in, those from the Jewish religion and from the Mohammedans. And so basically there was like all of this religious political strife, and they were all trying to gain control of Alexandria. And so during that time, she was sought after from the magistrates and from the ministers for her opinion. And she would publicly go to court and speak on behalf of the people, and she would question the political agenda. And so she was teaching men. And so what was happening was there was I don't know if it was what was his role exactly, somebody from the church, a bishop from the church saw her as a threat to his ministry. And there was a group of pretty eccentric, I wouldn't say eccentric, more extreme religious monks who were riled. They were carrying around stones with them, and there was just a lot of violence during this time because of the difference in beliefs between the Christians and the pagans. And so basically, he incited these fanatical monks, and they killed her in a very gruesome way. There's several different ways that they did this, but some of the stories go that she was on her chariot. They dragged her out of her chariot, and they just dragged her into a church, and then they stripped her clothes off, beat her to death, stoned her to death, skinned her flesh from her body, and then dismembered her and burnt her to ashes. And then this monk, or this bishop who had incited these fanatical monks to murder this really revered and well-respected wise woman, he was actually given higher status later on. And so he was recognized in rightful action later. And so that story just struck me, because I thought, like, how in the world could somebody treat another human in that way? For instance, like just the extreme hate and discontent that would have been part of that culture in order to allow for an act of that nature. But then to have it happen of somebody who was in a religious path, it always finds me as an interesting thing of violence in the name of God. But then also then being honored and respected and given more power for doing something that was inciting murder. And so to me, within her story, I just really wanted to honor her, bring her story alive for her courage. I feel a connection to her somehow. I'm not sure what that connection is, but I just really wanted to breathe her back to life, breathe her back into the consciousness of women, to see if there's any remembrance that sisters may have during this time from hearing of her story. And so what is really sparking me is that she was so deeply impacted by the patriarchy, because pretty much all of her teachings were destroyed in the burning of the libraries of Alexandria. So much of her teachings have actually been destroyed. Much of the teachings of that time period, of the mysteries of myth, all of the stories of the gods and the goddesses, of the science, of the philosophy, much of those have been destroyed by the Christians and the Mohammedans during that time. And so there's this loss, like I feel this sense of grieving for this loss of information. And not only do I feel the sense of grieving because there's a loss of that information, but also just a sense of grieving because that time period was so symbolic of the desecration of the goddess and the stomping on the goddess. And so to me, that goes hand in hand with the stomping on women, the subjugation of women, because historically, as the goddess was, diminished, demeaned, her temples were desecrated, the women were gaining less and less esteem, less and less reverence in culture, and they were starting to be objectified. And so she represents, in Alexandria at least, that with her death was really the death of an age of the philosophical teachings of that time, because she was kind of the woman who was really holding alive the philosophy of Plutarch, her teacher. And so when she was killed, that was super symbolic. And that symbolism goes beyond those philosophical teachings that she was unraveling and the mysteries that she was unraveling, but it's symbolic of the larger agenda of what the patriarchy was doing, which was trying to really take over the population and suppressing the goddess, suppressing the woman, so that then the themes of domination, control, wealth, land propagation, all of those things could be reigning in power. And so just breathing all of that heaviness in. And so the reason why I was really wanting to highlight Mary Magdalene and Hypatia together is that, Mary Magdalene came first, of course. And then Hypatia comes in about 400 CE. You have the burning of the libraries, and you really have like no more women in those roles of like the priestess or of the teacher, of the philosopher. And then about 500 CE, just like 100 years later, that's when the Pope comes and says that Mary Magdalene was a prostitute, which then was rebuked by the Catholic Church in like 1980 or something. I can't remember the exact date. But anyway, so I just found it really interesting. I was just feeling the thread between these women, feeling the thread of them in my life, and feeling how they impact women in general. And so I just really invite you, if you're watching this, to feel into those stories, feel into what those stories awaken within your DNA, because since our texts, our sacred texts, have been burned, that this information exists in our bloodlines, it exists in our DNA. And so we have to have these DNA activation codes of remembrance to remember these truths that were intentionally destroyed to take control over populations. Okay. Let's see, I have a comment from Vita here. Yes, I love the term hagiography, or spiritual biography that teaches spiritual lessons by the way of an enlightened being walked this earth. Thank you for that. I had never heard of that, Vita. That's beautiful. We'll have to look that up later. Okay. So now just kind of like sitting in that, I really want to lighten things up a bit. I know that that story is really heavy and really intense. And so I invite you to close your eyes to sit in ceremonial space, to sit in meditation. And to just deepen your breath. To come into stillness. To call in Mary Magdalen and Hypatia to be with us now. And I invite you, sister, to drop into your womb. And to breathe into the color red. To breathe into this color that connects you to your bloodline, to your mother and her mother and her mother, all the way back to the first mother that connects all women, all sisters, through the sacred ruby red energy that connects the bloodlines, that connects to the core of earth. And I invite you to feel the sacredness of your blood, of the blood within your lineage, within your womb. As an intentional act of embodying your power as woman, as an intentional act of bringing integrity, devotion to all of our sisters, past, present, and future. And I invite you to feel into your heart space. And use your breath as a vehicle to soften the armor of your heart. To allow your heart to energetically expand and open. And I invite you to imagine that all of the sisters of the world are standing in a circle around Mama Gaia, around Earth. And I invite you to open your heart space to expand, to encircle, envelop all of these sisters who are circling around Mama Gaia. In this space of openness, like to seed these prayers into all of the hearts of the women and of Earth. I pray that all women are being honored, that the divine feminine aspect in all beings is rekindling and nourished, that all women are able to embody the truth of who they really are. That all women feel safe to be seen and heard. That all women are cherished for their gifts, even the gifts that are anchored in the divine feminine. I pray that all women may walk as goddesses on earth. I ask that the wisdom of Hypatia, of Mary Magdalen, infuse in liquid essence to drip into your DNA, into all 700 trillion cells of your DNA, so that you may be awakened to the codes of remembrance, to the codes of truth, and power rooted in love. Okay. I invite you to open your eyes and to just be present with your breath. I welcome your comments if this discussion, dialogue sparked anything in you, whether it be shadow or light, fear or love. I welcome your comments and just ask that they're always given with heart. I'd love to know of your experience of the meditation. I'd love to know of your thoughts of, the stories of Hypatia and Mary Magdalen. And I would love to know how these stories are living through you. I feel called to invite you deeper into your experience of Mary Magdalene and of your power as a sovereign being. Right now, I am offering a 4-month deep dive called Embody Your Power as Woman. And the essence of this journey is to travel through all of the spaces of your being so that you may nourish, accept, breathe into your feminine aspect, like themes of sacred sexuality, Shakti, and feeling ecstatically alive, feeling connected to the cosmic womb, feeling connected to the rhythms and cycle of earth and moon, so that at the end of the 4-month journey, after sitting in 8 ceremonies, after doing deeply transformative alchemical healing meditations after receiving transmissions from me through me from Mary Magdalene. That the intention is that you emerge as sovereign queen of your life and have activated within you the essence of the rose, the essence of unconditional love, so that you can pillar that frequency into earth, so that you can feel confident to be seen, to be heard, so that you can speak your authentic truth, so that you can walk as the priestess that you are, so that you can be the healer that you are, so that you can show up as the coach, the mother, the sister, the friend that you came here to be. And so that whole offering has 3 different sister circles that you can join, all have different price points. The journey starts March 1st. I am offering 30-minute free clarity calls in which I will offer you some intuitive guidance, and also we will see if we're soul aligned for the journey. So if you feel called to learn more about the journey and you want to just see what it's all about, I will post the link. I have a lot of information on that webpage. If you have any further questions, please message me. Feel free to book a clarity call. And yeah, I would love to talk to you more about it. I'm really excited about this offering, and it feels just like that. It's just a deepening to feel into yourself as a powerful, sovereign being so that you can co-create the life that you dream to live with the universe. You can accept who you are and feel into your true essence. And that is at the root of this deep dive. Thank you for joining, and so many blessings. Namaste.